On this week's Back of the Grid, we're going to dissect an experimental weekend in Monaco and look ahead to what might be a pivotal weekend in Spain. So let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Back of the Grid. I'm Chris, joined as ever by Tom.
Hello.
Here to talk about, an interesting weekend in Monaco. I mean, as always the case, a fantastic Saturday. Qualifying was absolutely phenomenal again. The top three all put in unbelievable laps.
Yeah, that showdown towards the end was very good.
Very impressive. Which then led into, a Grand Prix with a new race-specific rule of 2 mandated pit stops. I mean, I know it's not exactly 2 mandated pit stops. It's a little more complex than that. But essentially, it was a mandated 2-stop race. Which I think, well, I won't speak for you, but I would say an experiment which probably failed. I don't think it made it a better viewing experience or a better race. Arguably, it made it a worse race.
We feared as much going into it, didn't we? It definitely wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it definitely didn't add anything, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
We've been saying for weeks we're going to get loads of people doing very early pit stops. As it was, I think there were 4 cars that made a lap 1 pit stop.
Yeah.
But it became...
It didn't even work out for anyone that did that in the end. I don't think it did really. Did it?
No, it didn't actually.
So...
it became a very tactical race and especially with inter-team tactics, which, to be fair, we have seen in the past before. I remember a number of years ago, Alonso basically backing up half of the field to give, I think it might have been his Alpine days, giving Ocon a gap for a pit
It was
stop.
Stroll. It was after he moved to Aston Martin.
Oh, was it Aston Martin?
Because Stroll came out with this huge gap that Alonso had built him and then immediately put it in a wall.
Oh, yes, of course he did. How could we forget?
Yeah. So...
But it was almost anti-racing, wasn't it?
Yeah. Look, I'm not saying we're right or wrong or anything like that, but I still think if you're going to tweak this race, something more along the lines of what we were talking about last week, where it's more that you only run the 2 softer compounds and you basically scrap having a harder compound, and that's your weird exception for Monaco. But, I think even then you're still relying on pit stops and things like that to make the racing interesting. I think we've said it for a number of years, but we're just at a point where the cars themselves are too big to be raced around here. And you end up maybe having to end up in a position where Monaco becomes some sort of quali-only kind of spectacle event where you've got 2 qualifying style sessions and you maybe have a trialed approach to it or something where everybody gets a 3-lap run and best average time with something weird like that. I think that's the only way it's going to work with these cars at the circuit, basically.
Even steal the Formula E duels format and do something like that just to make it a little fairer. They were, by doing this 2-stop thing, they were kind of trying to fix the wrong problem. I suppose the hope was that by having 2 stops, it would encourage them to go faster and take more out of the tyres, and they wouldn't need to tyre save to make it a 1-stop. But as it was, you had on the medium tyres, which is last year's soft tyre, Max did 49 laps, Ollie Bearman did 59 laps. Tyre wear still just wasn't a problem. And then you had...
It's not a stressful enough circuit when it comes to that, though, is it? It's too slow in comparison to the other circuits. And I know that's saying something considering how fast they do go through some of those corners, but generally speaking, it's a slow, low-deg circuit compared to most. So, it's never going to... I don't think... Unless you... I mean, that sort of proves, I guess, that even the idea we talked about last week is probably a little bit wrong, because me saying let's change it so that you can only use the soft and medium at Monaco and that's its exception. The fact that the mediums can do, what is that, like 80% of the race distance, maybe a little bit more or less, the give or take, and the mediums can do that without it being an issue, basically, is just goes to show that even that plan probably wouldn't make much of a difference, because there's nowhere for them to overtake when they have got tyre advantages and so on.
I mean, I'm looking now at the tyre strategies, and like there were quite diverse strategies that when you look across them, like Norris did medium, hard, hard. Leclerc did medium, hard, medium. Verstappen did hard, then medium and softs at the end. Hamilton did 2 hard stints and a medium, and it basically made no difference.
Yeah.
Like all everyone was really looking at was how many stops have they made. The tyres they were on was negligible.
Yeah.
And you know, and all the biggest problem also remains that you just can't overtake there. Like we saw what RB and Williams both did, and they were able to have one of their cars drive so slowly it built a gap for the other car to put a pit stop in. And I don't blame the teams for that. Like apparently James Vell's like texted Toto Wolff during the race to apologize for destroying their race because of the tactics they were doing. But like it's the team's job to maximize their results, and that was the best way for those teams to do that. Like both of them, RB in particular, masterfully executed the strategy at these races, and that can be applauded for that. It's just a shame that the strategy that they had to do was so anti-racing and dull to watch, and it's a frustrating one.
I mean, come on, when your top 10 basically finish in exactly the same order, other than a DNF that's bumped everyone up a place, and Hadjar, who arguably shouldn't have been ahead of people like Hamilton to begin with, like, for want of putting it a better way, but like the vast majority of that grid, that top 10 has stayed. In fact, the vast majority of the grid has stayed in the same order. Like, there's definitely a little bit more mix up in the bottom end, but I think that's because there's some teams down that bottom end that have either done a little bit more in terms of the sacrifice for their teammate higher up the order, or they've gone even more left field than others and it's not paid off.
Yeah, exactly.
But like when that top 10's virtually identical to what it was at the start of the race and there's no significant changes of place, I think that you've got to be looking at the fact that there's no real overtaking opportunities. I mean, I remember seeing like one overtake, and that was lap 1, opportunistic, and I think it was lap 1 anyway. But it ended up with said driver in the wall.
Hilariously, we've got, for move of the day, which we'll come to later, I think there's 2 options which are on the first and the last lap, and that's it.
Yeah.
And one of them they still managed to not show on TV, which is impressive in itself.
Yeah. They were too scared of cutting to Lance Stroll again, that's why.
Exactly, yeah, just in case there's something else exciting.
Yeah.
And then we had at the front, obviously, Verstappen did the opposite. He just stayed out as long as possible, hoping for a safety car or a red flag. Again, in the position Red Bull were in, absolutely the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But would anyone have been happy seeing someone win a race just by kind of chance and luck like that? Like, is that how we want race wins to be decided?
But this is the thing, isn't it? That is exactly the behaviour from the teams that you encourage by.
Yeah,
I mean, we talked about it for weeks. Like when the rule, or the whatever you want to call it, the change was first announced, and then last week before the Grand Prix, we talked about it on multiple occasions of certain teams in certain positions are essentially going to try that, like get a pit stop out of the way as early as possible. So they've done one, and then hold out for as long as they possibly can to the end of the race before doing the last pit stop within the last lap or two, just hoping for a safety car. And I know that's not like exactly what Red Bull did with Max, but they near as damn it went for that strategy. Pitted relatively early and then just hung out as long as they could on those tyres in the hopes that somebody put it in a wall and there was a safety car that they could take advantage of.
I mean, I'd say the only kind of positive I would say is that because there was so much kind of weirdness going on further back in the pack, I think it encouraged the front runners to go probably a little bit faster than they ordinarily would, just to make sure they had safe gaps. But even that's like clutching at straws to find positives out of it.
That's definitely clutching at straws.
I don't suspect they will maintain this rule for next year.
No.
I mean, we've talked a lot about other ways that can spice this race up, like, make it a time trial event, or... I mean, Alex Wirtz, who has posted some actually quite interesting circuit modifications online today, because Alex Wirtz, as well as being a former driver and a long-time chairman of the GDPA, which I think he's actually stepped away from that now, but he also has a circuit design company and works in circuit design. It's worth having a look at what he suggested, because he's suggested just some pretty small, very realistic tweaks that can make to the circuit to maybe make things better. But,
I mean, two of them are relatively easily done now. That's changing the hairpin a little bit so there's a wider exit to maybe encourage. It kind of widens the opening and then also widens the exit, which in theory promotes people. But it's not impossible to overtake at the hairpin. I think the problem is that because it's one of the only realistic points you can try, most people save all their defending until there. In terms of things like battery power and the things that cars have at their disposal to defend, they're usually saving it until that part of the circuit. And it's probably not too hard to just stick your car in the middle of the hairpin and be able to defend both sides anyway,
exactly,
because of how narrow it is. The one at Rascasse at the end of the lap, again, it's about widening it and changing the point of the apex,
pushing the apex out,
to try and convert it to a corner that I guess will promote a little bit of a switchback type mentality for somebody attacking, which again could work and is relatively easy to do from looking at it. I think the one that might provide the best opportunity is probably the most unrealistic one, because it involves having to do yet more sort of reclamation of what is essentially water in the harbour to change up Nouvelle Chicane. But I think the main problem with Nouvelle Chicane, and I see what the suggestion is to try and do this, is it's obviously the way that you break downhill and then obviously hit the flat as you're turning. And I think that is maybe part of what not puts drivers off from having a move, but makes it harder to make the move. And by extending that straight further and having the left-hand turn further down the straight, it sort of allows you to flatten out first, and then it's possibly a little bit easier to make a move work without unsettling the car, and then having it be less tight and giving it a little bit more space. The exit looks like it's a little bit more forgiving as well, in terms of not just a straight ahead barrier that's almost another 90-degree exit corner. So, I think, again, it would possibly be the best change you could make, but I think it's also the most unrealistic because of the sheer amount of work that would have to go into changing that harbour to be able to make it work.
That's a couple of yacht parking spaces they might have to lose. We can't have that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I think, at the very least, the fact that they've tried something different this year kind of feels like an admission that yes, this race is very much processional and they're open to trying things. So maybe that means they will be open to other suggestions in the future.
I think unless you can get the cars considerably smaller again, it's been like this for a decade-ish, maybe more.
Pretty much.
When you compare the cars to even a decade ago, they were still slightly too big for Monaco, but at least you could still get some racing out of them. So it's difficult place to be for Monaco when they've got 6 years left on a contract and 2 overtakes per race. That one comes from. I haven't even seen the Stroll one, to be fair, but I'm going to say it comes out of desperation at the end of a race, and then the other one just comes from opportunism during an opening lap where everyone's tightly packed. When they're the only 2 overtakes you've got in a race, it's not the best advert, is it?
No. The There is some bits to talk about. We'll have a run through some teams. I guess we'll start with McLaren. Super important win for Norris. I think in a season where qualifying, by his own admission, has been where he's been slipping up this season so far, to come to Monaco, a race where putting on pole is 95% of the victory, and to do that is really huge for him and his confidence in the championship, I think.
Yeah, it was a really important session, that Q3 session, for him in particular. He's looks like he can now maybe take that and almost bounce back from the last few races a little bit. Like, he seemed a bit more buoyant. Like, I mean, we've said a few times he's his own worst enemy. Like, everybody knows he's got the pace and he's got the ability, but he appears to be, from the outside at least looking in, he appears to be one of those drivers that becomes his worst own critic and believes what he's saying about himself. Like, over recent races in the press pen, hearing him say things like, I just need to be faster. And then the interviewer saying, like, the classic one for me recently was the interviewer saying, where can you improve? And he just like kind of went here and just sort of gestured to himself. It's like, that's just beating up on yourself for no reason. Like, and I think 100% if he's going to really take a fight to the championship, he's got to put that side of his personality to one side, and he's got to learn to get through it and learn that not every weekend's going to be his weekend, but take things from it to improve. So hopefully this is a step in that right direction. I mean, it brings the championship gap down to 3 points or something now, is it?
Yeah.
So that's positive for him from his side. The good thing, I think, throughout this is, again, this is always only looking from the outside in, but from everything you see, the relationship still seems pretty strong and pretty good between him and Oscar. There's no animosity, it would seem, from looking out and in. Like, they still seem to be able to have a bit of a laugh and a joke together, etc., etc. So it's not got to the point where it's affecting that yet, which is good. So I think that, going straight into Spain, he's got to take that positive outcome from Monaco straight into Barcelona and try and capitalise again, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he had pole in Barcelona last year, so he's going to be, in not as good a car as he's got right now, so it bodes well for him. And just really good for the championship that the gap's closed up over the last couple of races as well.
Yeah.
Piastri, like, a little bit scrappy this weekend by his own usually pretty high standards. I mean, arguably his messiest weekend of this whole season, actually. And if he comes out of that with a third place, that's still pretty good going. But, he had that crash in practice, albeit a small one. You saw him, he had a little bit of a tap of the wall during the race as well. Like you saying about, like, the relationship between the two of them, and looking at Piastri after qualifying and after the race, he just sort of had the demeanor of someone who was just like, I know I'm second best this weekend. I'm not kind of up to that speed, and I'm just sort of taking what I can.
That's it. And that at the minute, for me, is the difference between Oscar and Lando, and why, if it continues like that, Oscar will ultimately be the one that comes out on top, because he's had a bit of a scrappy, rough weekend to some degree, not at his best, yet he's still come away with a third place on the grid, which is converted into a third place in the race. Obviously, we know it's easier to do that at Monaco, but even still, like, to be off form but keep his head in the game and get an all right result, and only have the Ferrari between him and Lando, it will help come the end of the season.
Yeah,
getting results like that.
Speaking of Ferrari, they were suddenly really quick this weekend. I mean, Leclerc was looking favourite for pole for quite a lot of the weekend. For whatever reason, that car just was very happy at that track.
I think that's a Leclerc thing more than it is the car, though. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Lewis has done all right. What was it, 7th on the grid and then finished 5th with...
Yeah, he was 4th fastest in qualifying, but he had that...
Oh, yeah, it was because of the grid penalty, though, wasn't it? Of course, yeah. That's Yeah. So yeah, actually, probably yeah. Then the cars, or I mean, is it the classic Monaco is a bit of an equalizer track, wet or dry? You know,
Also
it
that,
is a
yeah.
little bit more of an element of the driver in there. And when you look at the top 5 cars, you can see why. I mean, even Hajar being in amongst there, like we've said over recent weeks, that despite his mistake in Australia, Hajar has really looked like a potential real deal contender for being best rookie, and he's mixing it up there with multi-world champions in terms of his pace for this
Yeah.
weekend. Alonso being up there again. We've said Aston Martin have made a bit of a turn, but when you compare where Fernando Alonso is to where Lance Stroll is, again, it's that
Yeah.
whole the driver is a heck of a lot more of a factor here than other circuits. So I think you can sort of see that a little bit in that top end of the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a rough weekend for Hamilton. You know, even though we qualified and finished fairly well, like that 3-place penalty was very much down to the team not communicating properly what was going on. And then
not for the first time either this season or this weekend. Like
no,
there was the whole debacle of what was it? We think we need to move to Plan B, and then Hamilton says, "Okay, confirming Plan B or whatever it is," and they're like, "C." It's like, so we're moving to Plan C. I can't remember if that was a legit thing I saw or not, or if it was.
I think that turned out to be a joke, but it was
even still,
the fact that you even thought it could be real says everything.
That whole thing as a meme format is like that is exactly what it must be like being Hamilton right now.
Yeah, I mean, I read some bits of the transcript of his team radio during the race, and he's like asking questions and not being given the answers he's looking for, and just like a lack of information. I think the most damning thing, I think they played the clip of it during the race. He like said something like, "What do you want from me right now?" And the response was maximum pace, like this is our race right now. And he's like, if that's the answer, he shouldn't need to be asking a question to be told that. If he needs to be maximum pace because this is our race, that information needs to be coming to him the second he needs it, not wait until he's asked what I should be doing right now. Like, really weird. Like, I forget his something Adami, I think his name is, the race engineer. Like, he was Sainz's engineer and Vettel's engineer, and both of them over the years had struggles with him. And I'm sure he's very good at lots of different parts of his job, because, you know, the race engineer job is more than just talking on the radio, but it just sounds so difficult trying to communicate properly in that car at the moment. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, you know, Lewis Hamilton's there because he's got a relationship with the people that run Ferrari. They like went and got him. Like, you would think if this is becoming a problem, like Hamilton knows enough people high up in Ferrari to like have a word in someone's ear, and they would maybe make some changes. And I know we only hear the bits that make good television, but it doesn't sound like effective communication there at the moment.
No, and this is the thing, isn't it? Like, you can hear that it's like not maybe winding him up is the wrong word, but you can tell it's having a negative effect essentially. Like, you can hear the shift in his mood,
frustration in
the
his
frustrations
voice
and stuff. And when you're driving, especially somewhere like Monaco, that is the last thing you want to be going through your head of that situation when you're trying to maintain the speeds that they are through the sectors that they are. So yeah, it's just not ideal. But I mean, all right results nonetheless, I guess, for Ferrari.
Yeah.
Despite that.
Yeah. What's next? Hadjar, we've already sort of mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, we mentioned like the team tactics that came into play to allow him to do the strategy he did, which was came in after 14 laps, pitted for the softs, stayed out for 5 laps, back in for hards for the rest of the race. But that was made possible by a career best 6th place on the grid. Such an impressive. I mean, the RBs looked good all weekend. Like, Liam Lawson was right up there as well.
Yeah.
But 6th on the grid. And then to execute that race was so impressive from him. I really didn't have him down as like one to watch this season. He very much felt like a oh, we've got an empty seat, I guess he's the next one on the list in the Red Bull
Yeah.
Young Driver program. But man, he's like really taking the opportunity. I'm so impressed so far.
Yeah, and points for Lawson as well, to be fair.
Yeah.
Despite him
His
doing a hold-up
first
job.
of the season, actually.
Yeah, so like definitely moving in the right direction for them. Like we've said in the last couple of episodes, in terms of championship standings, they don't seem to be where they should be. You'd expect them to be, from pace that we've seen of them anyway, you'd expect them to be like pushing Williams maybe for the best of the rest. So it's good to see them actually get a result that reflects that potential for sure.
Yeah, they've crept a little closer to Haas with this result. They're still in 7th. But yeah, you're right to mention Lawson. Like, for him to do that, holding up the rest for the team and also still pick up points of his own is really impressive.
Yeah.
And then, that's Hadjar's 4th points finish of the season. He moves up into the top 10 in the championship. Super impressed.
Yeah, really good.
Alonso, as we said, started 6th with that brilliant qualifying lap. And obviously after Hamilton's penalty, he gained a place. Running very comfortably in the points, albeit without MG UK, I think, for the vast majority of the race. It failed on him, but he carried on going. But yeah, his PU eventually gave up, which means he's still yet to score this season. I think it's something stupid like his worst start to a season in like 20 years or something ludicrous like that.
Crazy. And that'll go back to when he was in a Minardi, probably.
Probably, yeah. Mercedes just had a nightmare, both outside the top 10. Antonelli made a mistake, and then Russell had his car just die on him in the tunnel. They sort of seemed to try just going really long into the race, and it just didn't work for them. Both of them ended up sort of stuck behind the Williams playing their game for a while. Russell eventually just basically cut the corner to pass Albon and said, I'll take the penalty. For which the stewards seemed to say, the fact that you've basically told us you deliberately cheated and will take the penalty will give you a harsher penalty for it.
That radio message didn't help his case, did it?
No, that was a little bit silly.
Like, he'd have probably got something like a standard 5 second, 10 second,
5 or 10 second,
whatever it would have been for anyone else. But I think to go on the radio and say, I'll just take the penalty because I want to get past him and he's holding me up it's a slam dunk. Like, you're getting something worse, I think, at that point.
Yeah, I don't have a massive issue with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, a real stinker for Mercedes this weekend.
Yeah, not a good weekend for them at all.
And then, the points finish is rounded out by Ocon, who very quietly came home with the points. Again, he just did the business on Saturday and kept his nose clean in the race. And then the Williams guys both finished the points as well. Let's go back to lap 1, the Bortoletto and Antonelli thing, which we mentioned right at the start. Started off by Bortoletto getting past Antonelli at the hairpin, which was a really good, really opportunistic move from him. Antonelli came back the corner before the tunnel. Bortoletto ended up with no space and into the wall. I think it went down as a racing incident, which probably right, I think. It was opportunistic for Antonelli, but also I think Bortoletto left enough space for him to put the car into that space, and maybe should have covered it off a bit more.
Yeah, maybe. In a way, probably lucky that there wasn't contact, because then it probably would have gone more in Bortoletto's favour, I think. I mean, Ocon and Gasly came together there last year, didn't they? And obviously that made a mess. And
yes,
I'm assuming penalties went. I can't remember if Ocon got a penalty for that or not last year.
I think he did.
I mean, they were both DNF'd anyway, I think. I can't remember. I just remember them coming together and it being silly. I mean, I felt a little bit for Bortoletto because he probably did leave too much of a gap there for Antonelli, but as well, although it's a tight circuit, you've got to be accommodating for space, I guess, haven't you? And like sort of leave some space for the other driver. And it's a shame because it was a really good move around the hairpin to get the move in the first place. But yeah, definitely left too much room on the on the inside to let Antonelli ever go back at him. Probably lucky in a way that he managed to get it out the barrier and get back going again, because although he didn't end up with any points, he still recovered positions, didn't he, due to other stuff that went on around him.
Yeah, so that instance aside, Bortoleto had a really good weekend, actually. I mean, only 16th on the grid, but he was ahead of both the Alpines and a Haas and an Aston. Only like 300ths off Hulkenberg in qualifying.
Yeah.
And as you say, he did make some positions back. Yeah, like Bortoleto he is gradually improving as the season goes on. It's just so hard to show in that car.
Yeah.
The qualifying gap to Hulkenberg is very small. I think that's probably the thing he can point at the most to say, look, I am doing a good job.
Yeah.
Should we do some awards?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Driver of the day.
This is a hard circuit to put that on, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know. Have we had any suggestions? That's the big thing for me, because
pretty much everything I've seen has been either Norris or Hadjar. They're the names that
I mean,
the most.
I think you've probably got to look at Saturday, haven't you? He's the driver. I think
you do.
Driver of Saturday, not driver of the day for the race. And I think if you're going to go to that, you've probably got to look at that pole lap from Norris.
It wasn't just a good pole lap. It was like, it was literally the fastest anyone's ever driven around.
Yeah,
Monaco.
like the fastest ever lap under intense pressure, off the back of not his best run of form. Like, I think to pull that out of the bag and get it on pole in the situation that he needs it the most, or the race where it's most important. And to be fair, he had like a little bit of a fight with. Oh no, that was Piastri. I would say he had a little bit of a fight with Max, but that was, or was it Norris? Who did Max battle with for a little bit?
That was Piastri. I think. Norris had to soak up a lot of pressure from Leclerc, though, especially towards the end when Verstappen was backing them up. Yeah,
but yeah, I think you end up having to look at that quality lap. So I would say it probably is Norris on this occasion, with a bit of an honourable mention for Hadjar getting the job done as like a best of the rest. Yeah.
Cool. Move of the day. We've already talked about Bortoleto and Antonelli, which I thought was a very good move.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to drop now in the Discord chat Stroll passing Hulkenberg on the final lap of the race. In what I would describe as an extremely good overtake.
I don't know if you can say things like that about Lance Stroll, can you?
It just is that. It's a classic Lance Stroll. Every now and again, he just does something really good. Like, for those who haven't seen it, which actually is going to be most people because this wasn't on TV, but he went round the outside at the Nouvelle Chicane, just about left enough room on the inside for Hulkenberg, made the apex. It's a great overtake. Credit where it's due. I'm
literally watching it now. I mean, to be fair, when we were talking about how it's hard to make an overtake right there, he's done all right, hasn't he?
Yeah.
How much has he caught Hulkenberg napping a little bit? Maybe a factor, but I think the only thing that's bad for Stroll in this scenario is it's like over 18th place or something, isn't it? Oh, well,
yeah,
no.
Is
it 18th place in the end? Something like that?
Something like that.
15th.
15th. Give the man credit.
But yeah, like, I mean, it is an all right move, though. It's hard now because I don't want to give it to Lance Stroll over a move for 15th place, but I feel like it's hard to give it to Bortoleto when he then immediately gave it away and put it in the wall. It's very hard. And as Jose has pointed out in Discord chat, this race was so boring. We are discussing Lance Stroll moves. That is.
I'm voting for Stroll. I think.
Okay.
It's not very often we get to give him some credit, but on this occasion,
he gets every once in a while. Every once in a while.
And then final award.
Honestly, what the f*** are we doing here?
Candidates?
There's sort of lots, but also nothing this weekend, I feel like. It's like just everything about it was very odd. I mean, some of the tactics were very odd, but as we've said, you can't blame the teams for it.
Yeah.
I mean, Russell thinking he can just cut a corner to overtake someone and get away with it.
Yeah, and announce that he's done it intentionally for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the thing that really seals it.
Yeah.
I mean, the F2 and Porsche races both had corner one, carnage, which is worth an honourable mention as well.
Yeah.
They were both hilarious. But yeah, I think Russell basically announcing on the radio that he cheated is probably the thing that stands out the most to me.
That's fine with me. I'm all right with that.
Cool. We'll just do that and we'll move on then. Do you want to do some predictions?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, a pretty good weekend for some. We had a number of 4 out of 5, so very close to full wins. However, literally everybody that got a 4 got the first DNF wrong. So, which, I mean, that's an easy thing to get wrong at a circuit like Monaco, because it probably could be literally anybody, as we've seen in years
Gasly
gone by.
in the end, wasn't it?
It was Gasly, the official one, yeah.
Yeah, we never even mentioned that, the fact that Gasly just drove into the back of Perez.
Yeah. Perez.
I guess Perez. Wow. Honestly, this brace has broken my brain. Tsunoda, the other Red Bull that was at the back.
Perez.
I guess that's
Chris.
another late WTF entry is the fact that Red Bull had someone drive into the back of it hard enough to rip a wheel off and then just drove off like nothing had happened.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. So yeah, we got a number of 4 out of 5s this week, but sadly none of those got the first DNF correct. If you want to see if you're one of those people, then head to the website, backthegrid.com. You can see all the standings and the results there. In terms of the overall standings, Gordon Barham leads the way on 14 points. So it's still clinging on to that lead at the moment. In Fantasy F1, YN Racing scored 341 points this week, and that actually took YN to the top of the standings there. So we have a new leader in the Fantasy F1 with 1,850 points. Over in GridRival, Clarence 90 scored 1,023 points, which made them our top scorer this week. And Crust Union does still lead the way, but only just. It's about I think it's 30 or 40 points now. But Crust Union has 7,681 with a gap closing. So very close there as well. So if you want to find out how to get involved with any of those things, head to backofthegrid.com. The predictions, results, and standings are all on there. And then there's links to the F1 Fantasy, the GridRival Fantasy, and the GridRival IndyCar Fantasy as well, which some people may have had a good weekend in or not, depending on if you pick disqualified drivers.
I'm doing so much better in IndyCar GridRival than F1 GridRival this season, which isn't a great advert for my knowledge as an F1 podcaster.
I do bad in both, so it's fine.
It's I don't think my success in IndyCar GridRival is by any skill. It's just it's all luck so far.
I just pick the drivers I know.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
I know who that guy is.
Welcome to the team.
Yeah, I know who that guy is. I mean, I was lucky in a way that I picked Schwartzman before qualifying for the Indy 500. Then I realised that they don't give out points for qualifying in the GridRival IndyCar, and I was very sad.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, but it is what it is. So yeah, head to the website if you want to get involved with any of that.
Right. We've got another race next weekend.
Yeah. Last of a triple header.
Yep. We're back to Spain, back to Barcelona. A few things of note this week. Well, one really big thing of note this weekend. The new front wing flexibility tests are coming into effect this weekend. So all eyes will be on how they affect the running order. The general consensus from the team seems to be either saying, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference and we'll be fine, or I think it is going to make a difference to some teams, but we'll be fine. And every single team seems to be saying one of those two things. Some people are speculating that McLaren are going to be the ones that are hurt the most by this. We know from last season, McLaren were pushing the boundaries of their wing flexibility more than most. So yeah, potential for the running order to be shaken up a bit this weekend. And on top of that, I suppose, this is probably the race of the year where the most upgrades tend to be brought along as well. No detail yet on exactly what team's going to be bringing, but could be another thing that could shake up the order quite a bit, but hard to say right now how that might be. Rookie drivers, in the past we've seen quite a lot of FP1 rookie drivers. At the moment, only Victor Martins has been confirmed driving for Williams, because I forget that he's now a Williams young driver, not a Alpine young driver. But yes, he'll be in one of the Williams this Friday. I suspect there'll be another one or two rookies turning up. And then finally, is this going to be the last Grand Prix at Catalunya for the foreseeable future?
Well,
officially, the Spanish Grand Prix will be at the new Madrid circuit next year. A, will that circuit be ready in time? We don't know. And B, still a possibility they'll have 2 races in Spain. They've not completely ruled that out yet. But it's looking like this could be the last one at Barcelona for the foreseeable future, which I think would be a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I mean, as it stands currently, Barcelona is on the provisional list of circuits, just without a name, because you say the Spanish Grand Prix has been attached to Madrid. So, I mean, fingers crossed it stays there, but still, it's. I mean, it probably will depend heavily on how this weekend goes. If we can get a decent race this weekend, then maybe we see it get a new contract. Although it is frustrating when a race that normally, yes, it's not the most exciting race in the world, but it's usually fine, is losing its place on the calendar for a circuit that we don't even know, and from a design perspective, currently looks terrible. That's the worst bit. And I guess as well, I know a lot of people love Monaco for the heritage, but when that's got a 6-year deal currently and we're getting an average of 2 overtakes a year, I'd rather have Spain on the calendar than Monaco personally at the minute. And I know that might be a controversial thing to say, but if you're going to make me pick between those 2 at the minute, that's where I'd go. I'd go Barcelona over Monaco.
Yeah, same. I think there's possibility that Barcelona could become like a rotation circuit along with Spa and possibly like Zandvoort, possibly Imola going forward.
Yeah, I mean, for Spa to become a rotation circuit, it's a little bit of a tragedy in a way, though. Like, I can sort of see it with Catalunya. I can sort of see it there, especially if the Madrid ring is going to be a long-term fixture. I can sort of see that. And I know we talked about it either last week or the week before, like having a European Grand Prix again that maybe moves every few years and there's like 3, 4, 5 circuits on rotation, which would be fine. But it would be a shame to not have Spa-Francorchamps be on the calendar permanently and it end up being in that category. So yeah, be interesting to see how that goes, I guess, overall.
Yeah. Should we make some predictions?
Yes, let's do some preds for ourselves for this weekend. So I'll start us off and go quite simply. I'm going to go for Norris taking some confidence from Monaco and previous decent form here in Spain. And I'm going to go with a double Norris, that he can get pole and then convert it into a win again and maybe start that run of
bit of momentum
for himself, to counter the momentum that Piastri's had recently. So I'm going to go double Norris there.
I 100% agree with you.
Okay, so this is where it this is where it ends up being like George Russell or someone gets a double win because we predicted something that's so obvious, quote unquote. I mean, didn't we both go for double Max in Monaco?
Yeah, I think we might have done.
So there you go. Okay, well that was easy at least to get them filled in. What about first DNF, Chris? Where are you going for that one?
Alonso.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course. I'll tell you what, if you're going to do Alonso, I'll be even meaner and say Carlos Sainz.
We're the worst.
We're the worst people in the world, but who cares? We're flying through this. Number of finishes.
I'm going to hedge my bets this week.
Oh.
I'm going to say, although I've said a first DNF, I'm also going to say 20 finishes.
Oh, okay. Bit of bet hedging.
I'm ruling myself out of 5 out of 5, but also that's not going to happen anyway. So,
I'll go sort of, I guess, semi-realistic. We normally get a decent number of finishes here, so I'm going to say 19. I'm going to just say that the Sainz thing will be like some sort of failure, and that's what happens. So I'm going to go 19 there. And then random driver for this week, just to make things awkward again, is Oscar Piastri.
McLaren's back-to-back random drivers this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go for a double finish for them and say he will be basically behind Norris. So I'm going to go Piastri in second.
We're basically saying these new front wing rules are going to make precisely no difference to McLaren.
I mean, I am. I don't know if you are.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to come second.
Yeah. So basically, we've made almost identical predictions. We've gone Norris fastest in Q3 to win the race, a Spaniard to DNF first. Basically, everybody finishes, other than me saying that Sainz will DNF and you hedging your bet saying everyone will finish, and then Piastri second in the McLaren 1-2. How boring are we?
It's so dull. Right.
If you want to get involved, as I've already said, backofthegrid.com. Predictions are now open, so go submit yours. And if you do get 5 out of 5 correct, which, as Chris has said, him or I will probably never ever manage, but if you manage it, there is a prize. So be sure to enter week in, week out, even if you've not played before. Should we close out with a little bit of inbox?
Inbox.
Keep me saying now. Stay out. Box. Hey, man.
Quick one from Lucas to start. Was there actually an on-track overtake for position that wasn't teammates swapping places in that race? I can't remember one. I implore you to go hunt down the one of 2 overtakes that wasn't shown on the broadcast, which is Lance Stroll and Hulkenberg on the final lap.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very straightforward and easy answer, isn't it? Yes, there was one, and it wasn't shown.
One on the first lap, one on the last lap. Yeah. That was it.
Now, next, we've got a couple... we've got a question from Keith that's got 2 parts. So I'll do part 1 of Keith's question first, then I'll do the second part, because we've got another question that kind of ties into it. So, Keith's first part of his question is, having watched F1 for more years than I care to remember, this must rank as one of the worst and most infuriating I can remember. I have a couple of questions for you, and the first one is this one of the races with the highest number of lap cars ever, especially in the modern era? That's the first part of the question.
It's got to be up there, hasn't it? I mean, I know there were races back in like the 60s and 70s where people won literally lapping everybody. The one that springs to mind is Silverstone 2008 in the wet, where I believe Hamilton lapped everyone up to 4th, I think. But I certainly can't think of like a very recent race where there's been such a high number of lapped cars.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about Monaco specifically when I had this question for whatever reason, and I can remember a race in the 90s where Schumacher lapped everyone apart from the rest of the podium. I think it was.
Yeah.
Like mid to late 90s, just after he joined Ferrari. I think it might have been his first year at Ferrari actually, and he managed to lap everybody other than like the other guy. But then in that race, there was only about half the field finished, so it made it a little bit easier to lap everyone, I suppose. I don't know. Just one of those things. So there's definitely been races with a high number of lapped cars for sure, but I would say this is probably one of the highest ones in modern era. Probably the highest one in this engine era, I would say.
100%.
Like even the Mercedes dominant years, you'd still get your Red Bulls and Ferraris and stuff that'd stay on the lead lap. And I think that, what was it this weekend? Only 6 cars finished on the lead lap. Is it everyone up to Hajar lapped or something like that?
I think it was, yeah.
Something like that. Or maybe Hajar was the last one that wasn't lapped. It was
Hamilton was the last one not lapped.
Yeah, so it was around that point. So that's a lot. And I mean, people down the bottom were lapped, what was it, 3 or 4 times down the bottom of the pack this year?
Yeah, and Antonelli was 3 laps down, and then like half the field were 2 laps down.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Weird.
So yeah, anyway, second part of the question, I hope that roughly answers that for Keith. Second part of the question is, how have Mercedes in a relatively short time gone from the most revered and brutally efficient team on the grid to this showing becoming a joke? I did think that before the race had even begun, they'd given up and were just going through the motions. And then Guy asked a very similar question saying, what has happened to Mercedes and their inept strategic performance? How could they get this so wrong with both cars? It feels like if that was a Ferrari performance, they'd get crucified.
It's a fair point. I mean, as we said, their weekend was basically undone on Saturday because qualifying didn't go well for them. It did just sort of feel like it's a bit like, we've talked about this multiple times over the years and doing this podcast. It felt a bit like the worst old days of Mercedes putting everything into the strategy computer, and strategy computer said, this is your best chance. And they just stuck to it and didn't react to what was going on around them, really. They just sort of, we're going to do this. And then when everything was clearly falling apart and they didn't seem to be open to trying anything different. I mean, unfortunately, this race being as it was, I don't know if there's a whole lot they could have done differently, but they could have tried something other than cutting a corner or overtake someone.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, generally, they've not been too bad. I can see where both these comments come from, because this weekend was particularly bad. However, I think it's not exactly a permanent issue for Mercedes. Like, they have moments like this, maybe more often than they used to, because we've had like changing personnel and people move on to do their own things and with other teams and stuff like that. And I think that you've seen similar but not quite the same issues at Red Bull, with them starting to have a bit of a turnover in staff. And you've always seen it at Ferrari. We've always said it about Ferrari. Like, one of the reasons they probably struggle that much is because the core team constantly changes so much at Ferrari, and it's only once they get a little bit of stability that they start getting things right. So I think Mercedes and Red Bull are probably both starting to hit one of those transition periods where the people who were successful in the last 5 years or so are getting recognised for that success and starting to move on to start a career at another team at that next position in their career. So I don't think it's as bad as it might look from the outside. And I think that teams like Mercedes and Red Bull have enough going on about them to get the right people in the right spots to not make these a regular thing. I think they're more than talented enough as teams to go assess what went wrong on a weekend like this and deal with it. So I think they'll be fine.
Final question from Mrs. KB, who has a question about upgrades. How do teams decide when to bring upgrades to their cars? Is it determined by track characteristics or just when the parts are ready to go? And are upgrades things that teams simply run out of time to develop, test and produce during winter? Or are they sometimes copying ideas they've seen from other teams, or maybe related to the type of track, groups of tracks that come in the calendar? For example, lots of upgrades seem to happen at the start of the European run. Kind of all of the above, basically. In terms of when upgrades come, definitely you get more during European rounds.
Yeah.
Just because of logistically, most of the team bases are in Europe. And yeah, I'm like the thing is, F1 is constantly a test bed. Like no team has ever turned up at the start of the season with a perfect finished car. Like every single lap they do, they are generating more data. So, yes, sometimes they are copying ideas they've seen from other teams, but a lot of it just comes from measuring the data on the car, seeing what's working and what isn't, and then working on upgrades based on that, essentially.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? I think the bit about, is it things that they ran out of time to develop or get produced before the end of winter? Probably yes and no. Like, you sometimes see teams start a season with a car that they're not completely happy with, and they're still working on components of it. But I would say that probably happens more with your lower teams who don't have the same team resource to be able to get things done. Like we've seen it with teams like Alpine and Haas and stuff like that before, haven't we? Where they've not had everything ready to go day one of the calendar and are still working on things and maybe then bring things back. I think with your topper end teams, Mercedes a few years ago with the no side pod things, it wasn't that they ran out of time to develop something. It was just that when they got to track, things weren't correlating correctly with what they thought they were going to. They weren't seeing the results they thought they were going to and had to develop out of it. So you saw a lot of upgrades on that. So honestly, I think there's a lot of different things that can factor into it. And I think that the when ends up being a combination of when is easiest to get them on the car, as well as how critical is it to get it on the car. So when you're in a situation like Mercedes, where in those years and things aren't working, you want to be putting stuff on the car as quickly as possible, no matter what it costs to fly a front wing out to the Middle East or to Miami or wherever it is that they're trying to put it on it. If they're really underperforming, they're going to want that on there as quickly as possible. Whereas if it's more of a planned upgrade arc, like Chris says, it tends to end up being more your European races, like your Spain's is a traditional hotspot for it and things like that. I mean, did you mention, I might have missed this if you said it, but did you mention about like the fact that obviously you have different circuits that have different characteristics? Like, for example, Monza has a very particular aero package that teams won't bring out until that race, but then also sometimes gets used in places like Azerbaijan, I think, as well. Very similar sort of aero packages where you've got lots of long straight speed and more just heavy stop 90-degree corners that don't need the same aero packages. A lot of circuits with high speed corners, for example. Yeah. So there's a lot of things like that you tend to see these peaks and troughs in when teams do it for those kind of reasons, but then other teams just scatter things throughout the season to suit their own needs. So it's hard to say for sure, but I hope that roughly answers the question.
Yeah. And I think that about wraps us up this week. Somehow we've just about made an hour's podcast out of one of the most uneventful races I think we've ever seen. But yes, thank you for joining us regardless. As someone in the Discord mentioned earlier, if you do want to see an exciting race from the weekend, look up the Weenie 500, which happened on Friday. That was probably the most exciting thing that happened all weekend. If you want to get in touch with us, backthegrid.com, all the social media things are all in all places. Backthegrid.com is also where you can enter the Predictions League and find links to our GridRival and F1 Fantasy. If you want to join our lovely Discord community, you can go to patreon.com/backthegrid to find out how to do that. And we'll be back in a week's time to wrap up this triple header with our review of the Spanish Grand Prix. But until then, thank you for joining us and goodbye.
Bye, everyone.